People keep proving you can injure yourself doing absolutely nothing, that like gravity personally hates you. And trust me, what you're about to hear makes tripping over air look dignified. 1. A man managed to injure himself while attempting the extremely hazardous activity known as standing still, which apparently was more than his coordination could emotionally handle. He shifted his weight, felt his foot fall asleep, panicked, overcorrected like a malfunctioning Roomba, and collapsed into a strategically placed end table that had been peacefully minding its own business. The resulting bruise looked like modern art, but unfortunately the kind that only appears after you've made several poor decisions in a row. The man later explained that he didn't expect standing to be that complicated, as though gravity had suddenly updated its software without notifying him. It's the kind of event that makes you realize humanity was not built for parkour, athletics, or really anything involving 2 feet. Some people are simply one confused muscle twitch away from a full medical bill. 2. A woman attempted to multitask the 2 most dangerous household activities known to humankind, blowing her bangs out of her face and walking forward at the same time. She exhaled sharply, tilted her head to fix her hair, and gracelessly walked straight into a wall she had personally lived with for 8 years, proving that familiarity is no guarantee of safety. The impact wasn't dangerous enough for a dramatic hospital scene, but it was humiliating enough to make her question whether walls migrate when no one's watching. According to her retelling, the wall wasn't usually that close, which is a poetic way of saying physics betrayed her. The best part is that she insisted she wasn't distracted, as though the universe spontaneously spawned a wall out of spite, rather than her simply forgetting that breathing and walking require 2 different brain cells. 3. A guy somehow injured himself trying to wave hello, which is a gesture humans have been performing since the first caveman needed to signal, "I am friendly, please do not hit me with a rock." This man, however, committed to the greeting with such dramatic flair that he pulled a muscle in his shoulder mid-wave, causing his arm to spasm upward like he was saluting an invisible drill sergeant. His friendly gesture immediately turned into an unplanned interpretive dance routine, and he managed to knock over a drink, stumble backward, and collide with a decorative shelf that had absolutely not signed up for this encounter. His doctor described the injury as overenthusiastic socializing, which sounds like a diagnosis invented specifically for people who cannot be trusted with basic limbs. He later said he didn't realize waving required technique, a statement that forces you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew about human evolution. 4. A man attempted to open a jar of marinara, sauce with the kind of intensity usually reserved for medieval siege warfare, gripping it like he was reenacting a scene from a gladiator movie. Unfortunately, his strategy consisted entirely of brute force and zero situational awareness. When the lid refused to budge, he escalated the situation by banging the jar on the counter. Not enough to loosen the lid, but just enough to crack the glass in the exact direction of his own hand. The jar exploded like it had been waiting decades for this moment, and he ended up with a minor cut and a very dramatic red splatter pattern that made his kitchen look like a crime scene involving an angry Italian grandmother. His explanation was simply, "It shouldn't be that hard," which is a universal motto for people who think physics will take pity on them. Spoiler, it won't. 5. A woman managed to sprain her ankle stepping off a curb she had allegedly assessed as normal height, which is a bold claim considering her foot found the ground about 3 inches earlier than expected, launching her into a lopsided stumble worthy of a nature documentary about gazelles learning how legs work. She somehow achieved the rare combination of twisting, sliding, and dramatic flailing normally associated with cartoon characters on banana peels. Several witnesses claimed she looked like she was trying to interpretively dance her way to safety, but gravity, ever the strict choreographer, was not having it. Her final statement before accepting an ice pack was, "The ground surprised me," as though Earth itself had pulled a mischievous prank. It's truly inspiring how many injuries begin with a person assuming topographical stability exists. 6. A man injured himself sneezing, which sounds impossible until you've seen someone commit to a sneeze with the emotional intensity of a Shakespearean monologue. This man inhaled like he was preparing for liftoff and unleashed a sneeze so violent it appeared to reboot his entire nervous system. In the process, he pulled something in his lower back, staggered dramatically, and fell onto his couch like a Victorian nobleman fainting from too much scandal. His family thought he was joking until he announced with wounded dignity that he felt a snap. The sneeze itself wasn't even impressive. just medically consequential. He later defended himself by stating that the sneeze came out of nowhere, as if sneezes typically make appointments. It's a humbling reminder that the human body is capable of surviving plagues and predators, yet remains vulnerable to unexpected pollen. 7. A woman managed to bruise her ribs attempting the heroic act of putting on pants, which seems simple until you add one crucial factor. She tried to insert both legs at once, a move reserved for gymnasts, contortionists, and absolutely no one else. In her haste, she planted one foot incorrectly, lost balance instantly, and toppled sideways like a security camera being unplugged. She collided, with her bed frame in a maneuver that looked less like getting dressed and more like losing a fight with furniture. Her official reasoning? I wanted to save time, which is fascinating because she ultimately lost several hours recovering from the injury. The pants, tragically, remained on the floor, unbothered, victorious, and probably laughing. 8. A guy somehow managed to injure himself trying to drink water. Just water. Not carbonated, not boiling, not from a waterfall, just a harmless room temperature beverage. He misjudged the bottle-to-mouth distance by what must have been several inches, slammed the rim directly into his teeth, startled himself, jerked backward, and simultaneously spilled half the bottle down his shirt. This slippery chaos caused him to slip on the very water he spilled, creating a self-made hazard reminiscent of slapstick comedy filmed by a vengeful hydration deity. The resulting fall earned him a bruise and the existential awareness that thirst is apparently a high-risk activity. He later insisted the bottle moved weird, as if plastic containers routinely perform evasive maneuvers. 9. A woman burned herself using a microwave, which sounds like the microwave's fault until you discover she attempted to retrieve a bowl that had been heated to lava temperature using nothing but ambition and lightly moisturized fingertips. She opened the door, grabbed the bowl confidently, and immediately discovered that her pain tolerance was about as strong as wet tissue. The bowl slipped from her hands, bounced off the counter, and splashed hot soup onto her arm in a chaotic sequence that felt like an instructional video titled, "How Not to Feed Yourself." Her post-incident explanation was, "It didn't look hot," demonstrating once again that humans believe objects visually declare danger like a cartoon glowing red. Unfortunately, microwaves specialize in silently plotting betrayal. 10. A man managed to injure his shoulder sitting down too enthusiastically, which is both impressively unnecessary and deeply on-brand for people who treat chairs like carnival rides. He dropped into the seat with the velocity of someone trying to break the sound barrier, miscalculated the distance, and slammed his back against the chair in a way that made his shoulder pop like a stubborn jar lid. His immediate response was to pretend it didn't hurt, even though his soul visibly left his body for 3 seconds. The medical diagnosis was something along the lines of aggressive sitting, which is now a phrase that lives rent-free in my mind. It's unclear what exactly he hoped to gain by approaching a chair like an Olympic sport, but the chair definitely won. 11. One employee injured himself trying to pick up a pencil, proving once again that office environments are far more dangerous than nature documentaries suggest. He bent down too quickly, got dizzy, fumbled the pencil like it was coated in butter, and attempted to catch it mid-air. His hand smacked the edge of his desk, his head bumped the underside, and he ended up on the carpet like a Victorian poet contemplating the fragility of existence. Co-workers reported that the entire event lasted 2 seconds, but somehow contained more plot than most daytime television. The pencil, of course, survived without a scratch, silently judging him from the floor. 12. A woman sprained her wrist trying to close an umbrella during what she described as moderate wind, though given the end result, the wind was clearly auditioning for a natural disaster film. While attempting the simple task of collapsing the umbrella, the wind flipped it inside out, spun it like a demonic pinwheel, and yanked her arm with the enthusiasm of someone trying to win a tug-of-war competition. She resisted, because humans rarely surrender to inanimate objects without a fight, and the umbrella retaliated by twisting her wrist in a gesture that can only be described as meteorological disrespect. She later told friends the umbrella attacked her, and honestly, based on the physics involved, I'm not sure she's wrong. 13. A man managed to cut his hand while opening mail, which is an activity most people complete with one hand and half a brain cell. This individual, however, approached the envelope with the intensity of a surgeon and the technique of someone holding a knife for the first time. He sliced the envelope entirely wrong, and managed to drag the paper across his palm at exactly the angle needed to create the world's most humiliating injury. He showed up at urgent care trying to explain that mail had defeated him, and the nurse's expression reportedly hovered between concern and profound amusement. Just imagine being bested by an envelope, an object specifically designed to be handled by children and the elderly. 14. A woman dislocated her finger by pointing too aggressively. Yes, pointing, as in indicating a thing in a direction. She extended her arm with theatrical energy, as though presenting a grand prize on a game show, and her finger simply decided it no longer wished to participate. It bent at an unnatural angle, sending her into a spiral of shock, pain, and emotional betrayal. The person she was pointing at reportedly froze, unsure if they were being accused of something or witnessing someone lose a round of biological Jenga. The doctor described it as forceful gesturing, which feels like a polite way of saying her enthusiasm exceeded her skeletal capacity. 15. A man slipped in the shower because he attempted the extremely advanced maneuver known as turning around, a motion his feet apparently interpreted as an act of violence. He shifted his weight, lost traction instantly, and performed a full-body slide worthy of a nature documentary about seals migrating across ice. On his way down, he grabbed the shower curtain for support, which, in accordance with shower curtain law, detached immediately, offering zero assistance and complete humiliation. He landed in a crumpled heap, injured his hip, and created a bathroom scene that looked like someone had lost a fight with both gravity and polyester. He later insisted the floor was extra slippery today, as though bathrooms occasionally choose chaos. 16. A woman strained her neck trying to read a text message at an angle that would make a chiropractor physically wince. Instead of adjusting the phone like a normal person, she tilted her head sideways, squinted, leaned back, leaned forward, and essentially performed a slow-motion yoga pose titled Confused Crane. Her neck finally rebelled with a sharp twinge that froze her face mid-expression, leaving her staring at a half-loaded message that absolutely did not warrant spinal sacrifice. She explained the posture by saying, "The lighting was weird," which is a poetic way of admitting she contorted her body for a text that could have waited until she wasn't impersonating a pretzel. 17. A man bruised his knee attempting to retrieve a dropped TV remote, a task that should take 5 seconds unless you, like him, decide to kick the remote closer instead of bending down. His foot missed, his other foot overcorrected, and he ended up knee first on the hardwood floor in a display of motor skill failure so complete it should be preserved in a museum. The remote remained out of reach, untouched, and probably mocking him. He described the incident as unexpected, as though remotes are known for sudden evasive maneuvers, and not simply lying there while humans self-destruct around them. 18. A woman managed to injure her elbow while performing the death-defying stunt known as reaching for something on the top shelf, which apparently required more upper body coordination than her skeletal system was prepared to endorse. She stretched her arm upward, fully committed to retrieving a cereal box like it was her personal Everest, only for her elbow to pop in a way that suggested her joints had filed a formal complaint. The sudden pain made her lose balance, which sent the cereal raining down like confetti at the world's saddest celebration. She insisted the shelf was higher than usual, as if cabinetry secretly grows overnight to challenge human pride. Meanwhile, her doctor gently reminded her that maybe, just maybe, she should stop treating the pantry like a CrossFit training facility. But no, she maintained that the real culprit was gravity-changing angles. And honestly, I admire the creativity. Reality, 0. Denial, undefeated. 19. A man sprained his wrist clapping, which is not typically considered an extreme sport unless you're applauding with the kind of enthusiasm associated with motivational speakers and malfunctioning seals. He attended a work presentation, decided to bring energy to the room, and delivered a single, overly passionate clap that sent a shock up his arm like he'd just attempted to high-five a brick wall. His hand recoiled, his wrist buckled, and he spent the rest of the meeting pretending nothing was wrong while discreetly rotating his hand like a broken wind-up toy. The injury was later described as impact strain from vigorous applause, which is exactly the kind of phrase that belongs on a medical report framed in a museum of human hubris. The man insisted he'd clapped harder plenty of times without incident, which I'm sure is comforting until you realize he just admitted he's been training for this moment like applause is an Olympic event. 20. One employee strained his neck trying to look over a cubicle wall because his curiosity, not his workload, was the real driving force of the office that day. He attempted the classic workplace maneuver of the subtle peek, but performed it with all the stealth of a giraffe checking on a neighbor. He stretched upward, leaned too far, and felt something in his neck shift, which is never a word you want attached to your spine. He froze mid-peak, halfway committed to eavesdropping, and had to pretend he was simply admiring the ceiling tiles while his coworkers debated whether he was okay or just weird. His later explanation was, "I didn't think looking up could be dangerous," as though evolution didn't specifically design necks to punish people who use them irresponsibly. HR thankfully did not ask what he was trying to spy on, because the answer was undoubtedly something unimportant but highly dramatic. 21. A woman bruised her shin while putting away laundry, which is inherently funny because laundry is supposed to be the safest activity unless you aggressively weaponize your house against yourself. She bent down to place a stack of folded towels into a drawer, misjudged the distance, and slammed her leg into the open dresser with the precision of someone whose bones were magnetically attracted to furniture corners. The impact was loud enough for her family to assume she'd declared war on cabinetry. The bruise formed instantly, one of those deep purple masterpieces that makes you question whether towels are worth the risk. She told everyone the drawer jumped out, which is a charming lie, and a solid attempt at shifting blame onto an inanimate object. The dresser remained silent, because wood doesn't speak, but you could feel it judging her. Laundry remains undefeated as the world's most deceptively violent chore. 22. A guy somehow pulled a muscle brushing his teeth, proving once again that humans are overestimating their durability by several centuries. He started brushing normally, then leaned over the sink with unnecessary flair, turned his torso for reasons unknown, and suddenly felt his back seize like a laptop freezing mid-update. He froze, toothbrush hanging from his mouth, staring into the mirror with the expression of someone coming to terms with the fact that adulthood is just a series of increasingly pathetic injuries. Worse, he still had toothpaste foam everywhere, creating the tragic image of a defeated rabid raccoon. The medical explanation was a twisting strain, which is a professional way of saying he managed to injure himself doing a motion shared by toddlers and cartoon characters. He later insisted he just moved wrong, a sentence that doubles as both a diagnosis and a life philosophy for people who are one toothbrush away from urgent care. 23. A woman managed to injure her ankle while trying to kill a spider, proving that the true danger of spiders is not venom, but the human reaction to their existence. She spotted the tiny intruder, shrieked, leapt backward like she was starring in a musical about fear, and twisted her ankle on absolutely nothing except her own panic. The spider reportedly didn't even move. It simply observed as she executed the world's least coordinated retreat. The injury required ice, elevation, and emotional processing. She later declared the spider aggressive, which is bold, considering she was the one who attempted a hit and run using a shoe and got outmaneuvered by a creature the size of a raisin. The spider survived, still unpaid for its role in home defense training. Her pride, however, did not. 24. A man dislocated his finger attempting to open a window. And no, this wasn't a medieval fortress window with iron bars and rusted hinges. It was a standard suburban window that simply wasn't interested in cooperation. He tugged once, then twice, then gave it one of those increasingly angry wiggles people use when attempting to assert dominance over household objects. On the third pull, his finger slipped, bent sideways, and made a noise no finger should ever make. The window remained closed, smug, and victorious. His explanation was that the window fought back, which is one way to interpret his complete lack of hand-eye coordination. The doctor recommended being gentler with fixtures, which is what you say when what you really want to say is, please stop losing fights to architecture. 25. One customer dropped a can of soup in a grocery store and, in the most embarrassing showcase of reflexes ever recorded, attempted to catch it with their foot. The foot failed dramatically, the can bounced, and the customer managed to trip over both the can and their own heroic intentions. They fell knees first onto the tile in a display that can only be described as discount kung fu meets grocery store shame. Other shoppers watched with the quiet politeness reserved for situations where everyone is concerned but also deeply entertained. When an employee asked if they were okay, the customer said, "It slipped weird," as though canned soup is known for unpredictable behavior. The can survived without a dent. Their dignity did not. 26. A woman gave herself a black eye while attempting the ambitious act of pulling a sweater over her head. Somehow, in one fluid motion, she stretched the AC collar too tightly, lost grip, and sent the entire elastic band snapping upward into her face like a slingshot powered by pure betrayal. She staggered backward, hand to her eye, sweater still wrapped halfway around her head like a fabric guillotine. Her family asked what happened, and she had to admit that clothing, soft, harmless clothing, had defeated her. The sweater, ironically, was described as lightweight and cozy on the tag, a claim now proven to be vicious marketing propaganda. She later said she misjudged the angle, confirming that geometry remains undefeated in its ongoing feud with humanity. 27. A man managed to burn his hand lighting a candle, which is impressive, considering candles are designed specifically for gentle, decorative fire. He flicked the lighter, the flames sputtered, and instead of waiting a millisecond like a rational being, he leaned in closer, as though his face could encourage the flame into existence. The lighter finally ignited, sending a burst of heat upward and causing him to reflexively smack the candle, knocking hot wax onto his hand like some sort of scented lava punishment. He claimed the lighter attacked him, which is a bold interpretation of events. The candle, a vanilla-scented accomplice, took no responsibility. His house did smell great, though, an aroma of sugar and shame. 28. A woman sprained her wrist attempting to zip up a stubborn jacket, which is ridiculous, until you remember that jackets are among the most temperamental objects ever invented. She grabbed the zipper, pulled upward, felt resistance, and instead of trying literally anything else, loosening the fabric, adjusting the angle, consulting a scientist, she doubled down and yanked with the confidence of someone who expected brute strength to prevail. The zipper held, her wrist didn't. She yelped, the jacket won, and winter fashion claimed another victim. She insisted the zipper was rigged, which is close but not accurate. The real issue is that humans consistently underestimate the mechanical rage of outerwear. 29. A guy injured himself yawning because apparently even unconscious expressions of tiredness are too physically demanding for some people. He opened his jaw a little too enthusiastically, felt a sudden pop, and froze in horror as his jaw locked slightly off-center. He stood there, mouth half open, looking like a malfunctioning puppet while deciding if he should panic or just accept this as his new facial configuration. After a few painful seconds, the jaw shifted back, leaving him sore, embarrassed, and suddenly terrified of being tired ever again. He later claimed, "It was a powerful yawn, which is one way to describe losing a fight to your own skull." 30. A woman bruised her hip walking into a revolving door, which is the architectural equivalent of being defeated by a polite suggestion. She misjudged the timing, entered too early, and the door's rotating panel nudged her with the force of a mildly annoyed librarian. She spun halfway around, stumbled backward, and collided with the glass like a bird who failed the basic principles of transparency. The injury was mild, but the shame was profound. She insisted the door sped up, which is generous considering revolving doors move at the pace of a sleepy turtle on a casual stroll. The door had no comment, because it's a door. 31. A man strained his shoulder reaching for his dropped phone between couch cushions, which is a heroic image until you realize he wasn't retrieving a priceless relic. Just a phone he could have moved the couch to grab like a normal person. Instead, he dove into the abyss, twisted his arm at an angle forbidden by every medical textbook, and pulled something unpleasantly stretchy in his shoulder. He emerged victorious, but injured, holding the phone like a prize he didn't deserve. He later blamed the couch, claiming it grabbed his arm, which is a fascinating accusation against furniture known primarily for sitting, not tactical defense. 32. A woman gave herself a minor concussion by standing up too quickly under an open cabinet door, thus achieving the rare accomplishment of forgetting both she'd opened the door and that her skull has physical limits. She rose with righteous purpose, probably to grab a snack, and slammed her head into the cabinet with such force the snacks practically applauded. She staggered, swore, and sat back down, now humbled by the wooden predator lurking above her. When retelling the story, she said the cabinet was sneaky, which is technically true if you consider her ability to forget it existed after 3 seconds. The cabinet, for the record, was just doing what cabinets do, existing menacingly. 33. A man injured his foot attempting to step over a very small dog, which is already a questionable decision because dogs, especially tiny ones, are known for last-minute directional chaos. He lifted his leg, dog darted the opposite way, and he ended up performing a mid-air improvisational dance move physics did not approve of. His foot landed wrong, his ankle twisted, and the dog trotted away unharmed, possibly proud of its work. The man later said he just miscalculated, which is a polite way of admitting he attempted a maneuver that only gymnasts and toddlers with supernatural balance can pull off. 34. A woman burned her arm pulling cookies out of the oven because she believed she could, through sheer optimism, avoid touching the scorching metal that has existed at the same temperature since the dawn of baking. She reached in, angled her arm poorly, and brushed the hot rack with the precision of someone determined to learn their lesson the painful way. The cookies survived beautifully. She did not. She blamed her oven mitt, saying it slipped, which is incredible because oven mitts are famously not sentient saboteurs. The oven, meanwhile, continued its job with cold, emotionless heat, proving once again that appliances do not negotiate with human error. 35. A man managed to pull a muscle taking off his backpack, which should have been a simple one-motion task, but instead became a one-man reenactment of Greek tragedy. He slung one strap off, got tangled in the other, twisted like an octopus fighting itself, and performed a full rotational spin that ended with him toppling into a desk as though ambushed by gravity's special forces. The backpack landed neatly on the floor, perfectly unharmed, clearly tired of participating. He later insisted the strap tightened suddenly, which is an interesting way of saying he forgot his own arm existed. Watching someone injure themselves while removing an object designed for literal school children is one of those moments that makes you reconsider humanity's evolutionary trajectory. 36. A woman bruised her shoulder closing the fridge door because apparently the fridge decided to challenge her to a duel she was wildly unprepared for. She swung the door shut with just a bit too much enthusiasm, misjudged her distance like she was practicing blindfolded archery, and slammed her shoulder directly into the unforgiving metal with the dramatic thump of someone losing a fight to kitchen appliances. The fridge naturally didn't budge, because fridges hold centuries of stored resentment toward anyone who stands there staring inside without making decisions. Her explanation was that the fridge moved, which is a charming rewrite of events unless she lives in a haunted house. At this point, after the microwave incident earlier in the video, I'm convinced kitchens have declared a quiet, coordinated rebellion. 37. A guy injured his knee stepping into a bathtub because he attempted an ambitious high-step maneuver that his muscle memory absolutely did not authorize. He lifted one leg like he was auditioning for a ballet he had never rehearsed, lost balance instantly, and collapsed halfway into the tub in a clumsy splash that perfectly captured the intersection of hubris and porcelain. The sound he made was somewhere between a startled goat and a disappointed sigh. His partner asked if he slipped, and he insisted, "The tub is too tall," which is a bold criticism considering bathtubs have been the same height since roughly the dawn of plumbing. The tub, meanwhile, offered no apology, just cold, wet judgment. 38. A woman managed to injure her wrist trying to silence her alarm clock, a device specifically engineered to provoke bad decisions. When the alarm blared, she panicked, flailed her arm across the nightstand, and slapped the clock so violently that her wrist twisted on impact like she had attempted a roundhouse punch against an innocent piece of plastic. The clock fell to the floor, still ringing, somehow louder than before, because alarm clocks feed on chaos. She grabbed her wrist in agony while her half-awake brain tried to negotiate with time itself. Her official statement was, "I hate mornings," which, frankly, feels like the only medically accurate part of the entire scenario. 39. A man strained his back picking up a cat, which sounds adorable until you remember that cats are liquid with claws and a strong sense of comedic timing. As he bent down, the cat chose the exact moment to wiggle, twist, stretch, and become heavier through sheer willpower. The man overcorrected, lurched sideways, and felt something in his spine politely tap out of the whole situation. The cat landed gracefully, of course, because cats always land gracefully, then stared at him with the smug satisfaction of a creature that just won a battle it didn't know was happening. He later said the cat increased weight midair, which is something cats absolutely do, but only when they want to embarrass you. 40. A woman hurt her foot tripping over her own laundry basket, a stationary object she had seen 1,000 times and walked around flawlessly for years, until one moment of inattention turned it into the world's least threatening booby trap. She caught her toe on the edge, performed a spectacular stumble, and landed on the floor tangled in socks like a low-budget action scene where the stuntman doesn't get paid enough. What makes this even better is that she had placed the basket there specifically to stay organized, proving once again that organization is dangerous and clutter is simply misunderstood. The basket, as usual, took zero responsibility for the emotional damage caused. 41. A man somehow sprained his thumb using a TV remote, a device evolutionarily designed to require no physical effort whatsoever. He pressed down too hard, the remote slipped, and his thumb bent backward like a rubber band that finally snapped after years of service. His reaction was instantaneous disbelief. He sat there staring at the remote like it had betrayed him on a molecular level. He later complained that the buttons were too stiff, as if he were negotiating working conditions with electronics. Meanwhile, the remote sat silently, still refusing to change the channel, proving that even objects can judge your life choices. 42. A woman pulled a muscle getting into a car, which is the automotive equivalent of injuring yourself while entering a room. Embarrassing, unnecessary, and absolutely on brand for humanity's ongoing struggles with normal tasks. She made the fateful decision to slide into the seat in one dramatic motion instead of the standard one leg then sit approach, and her torso twisted in a way that suggested her skeleton simply didn't want to participate. She gasped, clutched her side, and froze halfway into the car like a malfunctioning robot awaiting reboot. She later described the incident as unexpected athleticism, which is a poetic way of saying she overestimated her flexibility by roughly 400%. 43. A man burned his forehead leaning too close to a steaming pot because he wanted to check if it was boiling, which is incredibly redundant given the giant billowing cloud of steam that should have provided all necessary information. He leaned forward like a detective analyzing clues, dunked his face directly into the plume, and recoiled instantly with the realization that steam, shockingly, is hot. He spent the next 10 minutes fanning his forehead and blaming the pot for overreacting, as though cookware has emotional responses. At this point, it's becoming clear that kitchens are not safe for anyone who treats appliances like they owe them explanations. 44. A woman twisted her ankle putting on socks, a task most people complete before their brain fully wakes up. She stood on one foot, attempted the delicate insertion of toes into fabric, and promptly lost all stability like a Jenga tower collapsing in slow motion. She spun, flailed, grabbed the air, missed, and landed on the floor tangled in a sock that had become her greatest enemy. She later explained that the floor felt uneven, which is an interesting accusation toward a structure designed specifically to be even. The sock remains the undefeated champion of domestic sabotage. 45. A man injured his neck nodding too hard during a conversation he wasn't actually listening to. Someone made a point. He panicked and delivered a single, overly enthusiastic nod to appear attentive. His neck snapped forward with the velocity of a bobblehead in a hurricane. He winced, froze, and then had to pretend everything was fine while maintaining eye contact so he didn't have to repeat the sin of nodding again. The conversation partner had no idea he was internally fighting for his life. This is what happens when social anxiety tag teams with gravity. At 46, a woman strained her shoulder trying to wave down a taxi because she committed too fully to the gesture. She raised her arm high, swung it wide, and produced a motion so dramatic it looked like she was trying to direct aircraft rather than hail a cab. Her shoulder protested instantly, locking up midair, leaving her frozen in an awkward half salute while the taxi she wanted drove right past. She stood there, arms stuck, pride dissolving, realizing that she'd just injured herself during the simplest public interaction imaginable. Truly, peak urban tragedy. 47. A man managed to poke himself in the eye with a houseplant, specifically a harmless decorative fern, because he walked too closely, turned too fast, and learned the painful truth that plants, while not sentient, are absolutely petty. The fern brushed directly against his eyeball. He yelped, stumbled backward, and knocked over two more plants in a domino effect that suggested nature had collectively chosen violence. He insisted the fern lunged, which would be terrifying if true, but unfortunately for him, and fortunately for humanity, plants do not possess legs. His eye watered for hours. The fern thrived, nourished by victory. 48. A woman injured her hand during the deeply risky activity of zipping her purse, something she had done 10,000 times before without incident. The zipper snagged, she yanked harder, and her hand flew upward, punching herself in the knuckle with the purse clasp as though mugged by her own belongings. She froze, stunned by the betrayal, while the purse hung innocently at her side, pretending it had nothing to do with it. Her explanation? The zipper fought me. At this stage, I'm beginning to believe accessories are staging an uprising. 49. A man bruised his ribs trying to put on his seatbelt, which is particularly tragic because seatbelts are supposed to prevent injuries, not cause them. He reached back, grabbed the belt, tugged, and pulled too hard, slamming the metal buckle directly into his ribcage with the accuracy of a guided missile. He sat there wheezing like he'd just lost a street fight to a safety device. When asked how it happened, he simply said, "It whipped at me," as though the seatbelt had a vendetta. Honestly, after everything we've seen so far, I wouldn't rule it out. 50. A woman tripped over absolutely nothing while walking through a perfectly flat hallway, an event commonly known as being human, but she elevated it into performance art. Her ankle rolled, her arms flailed, and she executed a full dramatic stumble despite the floor offering zero obstacles. She regained balance eventually, but only after emitting the universal sound of, "I meant to do that," which convinces no one. She looked around to see if anyone saw, and of course, someone did. A child, silently judging her with the ruthless clarity only children possess. She later said, "My foot slipped," but we all know what really slipped was her dignity. 51. A man sprained his wrist opening a bag of chips, which is the perfect grand finale because it captures the exact spirit of this entire list. Human beings losing battles against objects so simple they should be in museums labeled non-threatening. He gripped the bag, pulled with reckless abandon, and the bag exploded like a culinary grenade, sending chips across the room while his wrist bent backward in a move that suggested even his joints were disappointed in him. The aftermath was devastating. Chip shrapnel everywhere, salt in the wound literally and metaphorically, and the haunting realization that he had been defeated by a snack. When asked what happened, he muttered, "It opened weird," which is the international phrase for "I have no excuse." If there were ever a perfect symbol of humanity's eternal struggle against its own incompetence, it is this: a grown adult injured by a bag of chips. After all that, it's comforting to know the human body can survive meteors, pandemics, and history itself, yet still crumble under a chip bag. Drop it in the comments, chaos theorists. And if you want more proof humanity is held together by luck and duct tape, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and brace yourself for the next round.